Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more slug testing, and today we've got a very interesting combination to try out. It's one that I'm definitely curious to see what it can do, since these slugs kind of were designed or at least marketed towards a certain particular application, but we're trying them for something a little bit different today, so we could see some very nice results or we could be a little disappointed as well. We'll see what happens. But for the slugs we've got today, I brought out some of these. The Brenneke USA Tactical Home Defense slugs. They are also a low recoil slug as well, but they are a 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 1 ounce slug. Brenneke says 440 grains. 1 ounce is actually 438.5, so maybe that's accurate, maybe they overestimated a little bit, but it's pretty close overall. And they're claiming a muzzle velocity of 1378 on the back of the box, as well as a 1.2 inch group at 50 yards. So we'll see how accurate that claim is as well. Now, what's interesting about these is they're obviously marketed as a more tactical style shotgun for home defense purposes, lower recoil, a little lower velocity. So they definitely will serve the purpose just fine for that scenario. Obviously, if we were to test these at 7 and 10 yards and stuff, we would be putting them center mass, and they're a Brenneke slug. They're going to penetrate like mad. So they're going to go through several intruders all at the same time, as well as the wall behind them. But we're going to test these in a deer hunting application. Now, it does mention on Brenneke's website for these that hunters have also found some solid results at mid-ranges for deer hunting purposes. And if that accuracy claim of just over an inch at 50 yards actually holds true, that could legitimately be possible. And at the lower velocity, they're not going to have as violent of an entry back into the subsonic plane from where they start supersonic as well. So they might hold that accuracy out a little farther. But here's what one of the slugs looks like. Very standard Brenneke stuff here. Nothing fancy about it. If you've seen a Brenneke slug, this looks pretty much the same as anything else. So even though they're marketed as a tactical home defense oriented shell, I have a sneaky suspicion that these would be a pretty decent mild recoil option for deer hunting if they are actually accurate and can hold good enough groups to moderate ranges anyway. So we'll see what happens. As for the setup we're putting them through, I brought out the Remington 870. This is your very standard run-of-the-mill 870. It's a smoothbore barrel, 26 inches long. We're going to be running the stock improved cylinder for a choke, which is also what Brenneke recommends. And up on top, I have a Hawk Vantage IR 3-9x40 with the slug gun reticle in it. So if this works, this could be a surprisingly decent deer hunting combination right here. So as for today's test, we're running it the same as we usually do, just like any of our other slug tests. We're going to shoot 2 groups, one at 50 yards and another at 100 yards. Ideally, they're going to be 3-shot groups. If we see some random flyer somewhere or I pull a shot real bad, I did bring an extra shell or 2 out here to compensate for that if we need to take another shot for whatever reason. But all of them will be put through the chronograph as well, so we can get velocities and calculate energy numbers. So let's get you guys a view of those targets and see what we can get from a slug that isn't necessarily designed for the purpose that we're going to be testing today. All right, so we'll run through our chronograph numbers real quick before we look at our target. The boss claim is 1378. We have a 24-inch barrel on this gun, and I think we were actually averaging a little bit over that claim. So they could have tested these through a slightly shorter barrel, maybe a little more tactical of a setup, since that's kind of what these were designed for. But at least we're getting at least muzzle velocity from these, which is good for hunting scenarios. But we had a high of 1454, a low of 1351. That gave us an average of 1398. So yeah, just a little bit above their claim on average, but I'd say we're definitely in the ballpark for what they're saying we should be anyway, with an extreme spread of 103 and a standard deviation of 28. So not overly consistent as far as velocity goes from one slug to the next. I would have kind of liked to see a little more consistency there, but it's not the worst we've seen. But at an average of 1398, here's your muzzle energy for a 1-ounce slug, or Brenneke's claim of 440 grains. Obviously, that's plenty good enough for your average deer hunt scenario all day long. Even though these are a home defense tactical style slug, they're still moving plenty quick enough to do the job out to moderate range. 100 yards and in, that's gonna do the job just fine. So it's always nice to see what the boss claims, or potentially a little more, but how accurate were they? Let's go look at our target. All right, so here's our targets, and we definitely saw some pretty interesting looking results here. We'll start on the left with our 50-yard group. The very first shot I took was this guy down here at the bottom. You can obviously see that bullet hole isn't perfectly straight. We definitely had a little bit of yaw, and the back end of that tail wad definitely favored to the left a little bit. And after the next two shots were up here at the top touching each other, I decided, well, I brought 2 extra shells out here. If we saw something like this happen, I'll take 1 extra shot to see what happens, and that's this guy right over here. So our first shot was definitely a little bit funny. It favored low where the rest of them grouped right up here nice and tight to each other. Remember the claim, we had 1.2 inches on the back of the box at 50 yards, and I think we were pretty close to that, if we don't include that one that was definitely not flying perfectly stable anyway. And sure enough, we had 1.33 inches. With a 1.2 claim, that's pretty close, and it would be 2.64 inches if we did include that bottom one, so from top to bottom right there. So initially, on one hand, we got some very nice results there at 50 yards. 1.3 inches, stacking them just about touching or touching, I'll take that all day long. But that one little bit unstable one, don't love to see that. And unfortunately, seems like that's kind of becoming a trend with a lot of the brand new Brenneke slugs for one reason or another. You'll have a handful of them that are great, and then you'll throw one that's clearly not quite stable like that. But now moving over to the right with our 100-yard group, our first shot, we put one right down here, which makes perfect sense. Typically between 2 and 4 inches of bullet drop with a slug at 100 compared to 50 is about right. And that's what we were seeing compared to where we were actually hitting over at 50 there. And then our second shot, we strung one way up here, and that was kind of the trend. A little bit of back and forth here, but what's interesting, these 2 bullet holes down here are perfectly straight. These 2 bullet holes up here are not. It might be a little hard to tell on the camera, but this top bullet hole up here, the back end of it is yawed up a little bit. You can kind of see how the top edge of that cardboard is torn a little weird, and the bottom one of those 2 slugs, the back end of the slug actually yawed to the left a little bit. So clearly we have a little bit of instability here, kind of at random. We hit a little low over here with this one, and these 2 that weren't perfectly straight hit high. But the 2 that were perfectly straight hit right on the money down here where I would expect them to be at. And that bullet hole here looks a little deceiving on camera too. It is actually straight looking at it here in real time on the paper. So clearly, little bit of back and forth here. I took that 4th shot because I brought 2 extra slugs out here for that reason. One I shot at 50 and one I shot at 100, and the same trend happened. When the slugs are flying stable, they're looking really good. When they have a little bit of yaw to them, if that tail wad piece didn't act perfectly as designed, then we definitely flung them off a little bit. So we've got some very good potential here, but it's not consistent potential. These 2 down here are about 1.7 inches from each other. These 2 up here are a hair over 2, and from very top to very bottom is about 11 inches worth of overall spread. So some very interesting results. I don't love the inconsistency, but maybe if we go to a little bit different choke, I've got a rifle choke I plan on testing, and I've got a rifled barrel that I plan on running these through as well. Maybe one of those combinations might dial them in a little bit, or at least get rid of that inconsistency. So for a home defense oriented slug, it's really not too bad overall. If they perform the way they're supposed to, that is some very nice results. And that's what it should be from a Brenneke slug. So we've got some more testing to do, and we'll see if that trend continues as we test it through different chokes or different barrels. But we definitely have some good potential to start with, that's for sure. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about those results right there? I think we pretty well covered it at this point. We've got good potential, and if they perform the way they're supposed to, they work great. They're definitely pretty accurate overall. But it looks like the second that tail wad piece doesn't quite perform the way it's supposed to, we definitely start throwing them off a little bit. A little bit of instability comes in, and that's the thing with a Brenneke slug. If they lose that tail wad, or it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do, and seal up against the back of that slug nice and straight, we can get results like that. And unfortunately, we've seen that same thing happen a number of times with a variety of different Brenneke slugs that we've tested here recently. And it seems to be a little more of a modern issue here as well, because I don't ever remember Brenneke being a little inconsistent like that. Typically, they're either good or they're not. So we've got some more testing to do here overall. But leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Brenneke Tactical Home Defense slugs? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? Is this a combo you would ever run for a deer hunting situation? Or they would obviously be plenty good enough at 10 feet for a home defense scenario as well. So would you just stick to using them for that purpose? And maybe what other combos might you want to see me run those through? Let me know what y'all want to see down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.